Back in 2021, Game Mill Entertainment and Nickelodeon released Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, a fighting game akin to the original Super Smash Bros. Series, where it has characters from SpongeBob, Ninja Turtles, and Avatar, and many more fighting on the battlefield. It was a fun game, but it was empty. And in 2023, they announced that a sequel will be coming out, and I was hyped. One big change that they actually added into the sequel that was in the first game, super moves. All 26 characters have a super move in this game, and I'll be going through every last one of them. And I'll be going through strictly the base fighters, as there is going to be DLC, but I want to tackle these 26 characters first before I get to those later on. So guys, without further ado, let's get started. We start off with the nautical sponge himself, SpongeBob. For his super move, he gets into a boat with Mrs. Puff and starts driving crazy on the road, hitting the opponent. This is mainly a reference to how SpongeBob in his show is a pretty bad driver, and whenever there's a boating school episode, he would always cause damage in Bikini Bottom and everywhere he goes. Then we move on to SpongeBob's best friend, Patrick Star. For his super move, he grabs his rock and starts crushing the opponent multiple times. This is a reference to the Season 1 episode, Home Sweet Pineapple, in which in that episode, SpongeBob's house was eaten by nematodes, and Patrick allowed SpongeBob to stay at his place, but unfortunately Patrick is a messy sleeper, and when SpongeBob was trying to get a good night's rest, Patrick accidentally crushes him multiple times with his rock, and with him saying spiders, obviously having a fear of them. Then we move on to SpongeBob's grumpy neighbor and co-worker, Squidward Tentacles. For his super move, he gets hit by a shoe and he turns into Handsome Squidward, spinning around hitting the opponent until he gets hit by a pole himself. Handsome Squidward is a very iconic meme in SpongeBob SquarePants, debuting in the episode The Two Faces of Squidward that was in Season 5. In that episode, SpongeBob accidentally hits Squidward's face on a door, turning him incredibly handsome, as well as Bikini Bottom going crazy over his looks. This became an iconic meme in SpongeBob, even to the point where Handsome Squidward returned later on in an episode with Squidward's Sick Days. We now move on to the chum bucket owner himself, Plankton. For his super move, he accidentally activates the self-destruct mode on his robots, destroying the robot and the opponent in the process. This is pretty much an original Final Smash, but it is a reference to an episode. In the Season 2 episode Imitation Crabs, Plankton disguises himself as Mr. Krabs, and he actually has a feature where he can self-destruct with a coin. And even plus Plankton stated,
"Coin-operated self-destruct. Not one of my better ideas."
We now move on to the tiger superhero himself, LTre. For his super move, he unleashes the Great Tiger Spirit and goes on a flurry of attacks on the opponent. This is a reference to, well, the Great Tiger Spirit, which debuted in the episode The Great Escape, which in that episode, Mania and Frida find themselves in the Day of the Dead when Sartana of the Dead is taking over Miracle City, and Manny must gather up all the previous generations of the Riveras to take her on. Next is the modern marsupial, Rocco. For his super move, he yells at the opponents saying that they're fired, launching them out of the comic shop, in which the opponent gets hit by a truck, a train, a boat, a meteor, and ending it off with a giant hand giving him the flick. This is a reference to the episode from Season 1, Power Trip, in which Rocco becomes his boss, Mr. Smitty. And speaking of which, the giant hand is actually a reference to the intro, in which, well, the giant hand flicks Rocco into the real world. Next, we move on to Retroville's Rocket Boy, James Isaac Neutron. For his super move, he gets into his rocket and starts launching and zooming at the opponent until going into space. This is mainly an original super move, but there are a few references. Mainly, this is a reference to how in the show, Jimmy and friends normally don't wear helmets in space, and they actually explain this to us in a later episode, and that's the reason why, because Next, we move on to Lucy Loud. For her super move, she unleashes a barrage of bats, which soon forms a tornado hitting the opponent. This is also another original super move. As for this one, it mainly just comes down to the fact that it mainly references that Lucy is a goth child and has an affinity for bats. For Daggett and Norbert's super move, they use the Mindulator. As they prepare using the Mindulator, it stops working midway through and decides that they should throw the weapon at the opponent. This is a clear-cut reference to the Halloween episode from the Angry Beavers, The Day the World Got Really Screwed Up, where in that episode, the duo lands inside a B-horror movie, and one of the main characters of that movie uses the modulator the same way that they use it in their super move, where they just throw it at the monster. We now move on to the cat that hates Mondays, Garfield. For his super move, he puts the opponent into his dream, and in that dream, a donut, a bowl of lasagna, and a pie spawn arms and legs and launches the opponent off the bowl. This is pretty much a reference to how Garfield can have hallucinating dreams about food and that they can walk. Next we have is Aang. For his super move, he gets into the Avatar state and unleashes the boy with all the 4 elements on the opponent on a rock pillar. This is pretty much primarily a sort of original super move, but this might be a reference to the series finale of the original show, Sozin's Comet, in which he was fighting Ozai on one of the rock pillars in the finale. Next up is Korra. She too also uses the 4 elements on the opponent, but this time different from Aang's, as she levitates them and uses all the 4 elements in a ball and unleashing them onto the opponent. This is again another sort of original super move, but in the episode in Season 1, Endgame, this is where Korra learned the Avatar state and how to use it. Next is the Princess of the Fire Nation, Azula. For her super move, she unleashes blue flames coming out of her hands and unleashes them onto the opponent. This is pretty much a copy-paste similar to Aang's super move, but instead just with blue flames. As has been stated, Azula's pretty unique with these blue flames because she's the only firebender to have that kind of special ability. Next, we move on to the ninja troll that's cool but crude, Raphael. For his super move, he comes in with a barrage of attacks with his sai, slicing at the opponent here and there. This is mainly an original super move, with no references to any pre-existing team in Team Media. It mainly just references the fact that Raphael is the hothead of the team. Next, we move on to the ninja troll that does machines, Donatello. For his super move, he gets into the turtle van with the other 3 turtles with him, shooting at the opponent with the roof lasers. So, the turtle van debuted in the Season 1 episode, Hot Rodding Teenagers from Dimension X, in which initially, before that episode, it was just pretty much Baxter Stockman's van before Donatello gave it a few cosmetics and a few more upgrades. Next, we move on to the Turtles' close ally, April O'Neil. For her super move, she unleashes a giant spirit bomb to the opponent. Yeah, there really is no reference to this one either. It's just that, well, I guess April O'Neil is a news reporter and the spirit bomb does have news on it, so she is giving them the news. Yeah, this one really doesn't make a lot of sense. For Danny Phantom's super move, he whips out the Fenton Thermos, and with the Fenton Thermos, it sucks the opponent in, putting them in a restraint and causing them to get damage. The Fenton Thermos is a very prominent weapon used in the series, as it's able to suck in ghosts and unleash them as back in the Ghost Zone. And this weapon, again, is used also in Danny's moveset. Next up is the rock and roll ghost of the Ghost Zone, Ember McLean. For her super move, she unleashes powerful waves from her guitar onto the opponent. This is primarily an original super move, but it's also a reference to her debut episode from Danny Phantom, Funning the Flames, in which her power is that she pretty much plays music while trying to make sure that she's not forgotten. For Grandma Gertie's super move, she activates 2 wires together, and with those 2 wires, a train comes in, hitting the opponent with her escaping swiftly. As Hey Arnold is a pretty grounded show, this is again a very original super move, but her putting 2 wires together is actually a reference to the Season 1 episode, Das Subway, where she puts 2 wires together to help Arnold and the gang get home safely. And if this doesn't solidify her as the Captain Falcon of this game, I don't know what else. We then move on to the other Hey Arnold rep, Gerald. For his super move, he tells the story of the Ghost Bride. As he's telling this story, the actual Ghost Bride is summoned, and as she holds her axe, she goes to the graveyard and slices the opponent. This is a reference to the episode of Season 5, Ghost Bride, in which Gerald tells the story and the other boys try to prove that the Ghost Bride doesn't exist as they go to the local cemetery, and shenanigans ensue. Our next character is Nigel Thornberry. For his super move, he goes into his binoculars and narrates an elephant falling from the sky. As the elephant is falling from the sky, it eventually lands on the opponent, crushing them. Similarly to Hey Arnold, The Wild Thornberrys is another show that's grounded in reality. But it is a reference to the fact that Nigel himself has a TV show where he travels the world and documents on different animals. And elephants are one of the primary animals shown in The Wild Thornberrys. Next up is the Urkin Invader, Zim. For his super move, he calls upon Mini-Moose, and as Mini-Moose does what Zim axes, he blows up the earth with a huge beam. This is primarily an original super move, as in the show, Zim is pretty incompetent when it comes to destroying, taking over the earth. And this is again mainly just original, but could also be a reference to how in the opening of the show, you imagines him ruling the earth in some way. So I guess that's the closest that we can come up to. Next is the teenage robot Jenny Wakeman, or XJ9. For her super move, she gets into a meditation pose and unleashes the Shiva swords. The Shiva swords are one of Jenny's main weapons that she used throughout the show. It's one of the weapons that was first appeared in the episode Raggedy Android. Next we have Repar. For his super move, he becomes giant and slowly walks through burning buildings until he sees the opponent and unleashes his fire breath upon them. This is pretty much a reference how Repar is primarily the Godzilla of the Rugrats universe and is sometimes seen as an occasional villain. And this is noted in a couple of episodes of Rugrats, most notably Reptar on Ice and Runaway Reptar, where he's classified and portrayed as sort of the Godzilla of the show. For Ren and Stimpy's super move, it starts with Ren being in an office. He answers a phone call, and after dealing with a dispute, he laughs mischievously and hits a button, destroying the earth. So this is a reference to a couple of things. Firstly, the whole idea of Ren being in an office and answering a dispute while pressing the button, that is a reference to the episode Stimpy's Fan Club, a very iconic episode from the original series. Him destroying the earth, surprisingly, was not in that episode, as he destroyed a part of the earth with being Florida. The whole earth itself was actually a reference to the episode Ren's Brain, in which, yes, like I stated, he destroys the entire earth. We also get to see, different backgrounds of him laughing, in which that is mainly a reference how in some episodes of Ren Stimpy, there'll be an abstract background with different dots here and there. And that is going to do it for all the base fighters in Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2. As I stated, this is just going to be primarily for the base fighters only, as this year we're going to be having 4 DLC characters coming our way: Mr. Krabs, Zuko, Iroh, and Rocksteady. So I will be doing a video on those 4 when they all release. And special shout out to Kingly Nerd, who gave me all the references to most of the characters that I needed. So thank you, man. You really helped me out for this video. And also, hope you guys liked this video. Share and subscribe. Click the notification bell. And guys, this is OG Diesel signing off.